Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous, bienvenue sur ce nouvel épisode du Try Bandit avec une invitée que j'ai la chance d'appeler une amie, quelqu'un qui a eu une carrière dans le triathlon incroyablement longue et qui continue à être extrêmement impliqué dans le triathlon, principalement avec son activité de commentatrice pour Challenge Family et d'autres événements. Belinda GRANGERsi, welcome to the Try Bandit.
It is an absolute pleasure. I mean, obviously, you and I go a long, long way back, pretty much to the beginning of my career as a triathlete. So to be able to do this podcast with you today, it's an absolute honor, Arno.
Thank you very much for your time. I know you are pretty busy, especially with commentating at the moment. So it's great to have you here. That was one thing I wanted to start because you had a crazy long career. If I'm not wrong, you started racing as a pro early 2000, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep, I think it was 2000, maybe 1999, 2000, definitely around that time.
And when did you pull the plug on the professional career?
It's funny, Arno, I get asked this question quite a lot. And I think every time I answer it, I give a slightly different response because, to be honest, I can't bloody remember. I think I can't remember. Oh.
I remember we racing together in 2014 in Roth.
Yeah.
But and I'm sure I saw you racing after, but I couldn't find the exact date.
Well, I did. It's funny because I think every professional athlete has his or her way of retiring from the sport or deciding when you're out. And for example, someone like Jan Frodeno, he did his last race at the Ironman World Champs, and then that was it. Whereas someone like Sebastian Kienle took a whole year to retire, had a retirement year. And I definitely had a retirement year, but I also had celebrations after my last full distance race. Then I had a celebration after my last middle distance race. Then I had a celebration on my last Laguna Phuket race. So I had all these separate celebrations for the last of. But I think it was around 2015, possibly 2016, where I did do my last race. And the issue is I didn't stop going to races. That's what makes it a little bit confusing for myself and for others, is that I stopped racing, but I continued to keep showing up to races, but just in a different capacity. So that's why I think where it gets a little bit hard to know when I actually retired.
Yeah, because for you, I mean, there was like a switch between the professional career as an athlete, and then I think let me know if I'm wrong, but you started doing the commentary when you were still active as a professional at the end of your career, right?
I did. And, it wasn't something that I went looking for. I sort of I randomly fell into it, to be honest. And, all my friends laugh about it because they know it was always going to happen. I mean, I talk a lot. Anyone that knows me knows two things. One, I love the sport of triathlon, and two, I talk nonstop. So it was sort of a given that I would fall into the role of commentary. But, my main role is still pro liaison for Challenge Family, and it's actually a really interesting story, I know. I was at the Ironman World Champs in Kona, and I was there as a spectator. I was not there to race. I had lots of friends racing. And I actually met up with, back then it was Zibby, because he was in charge of Challenge Family back then. And he actually asked me what I would like to do. They said, we want you to work for us, but we don't know what role we should give you. And he actually allowed me to make up my own job description. So there's not too many people that get to do that in this lifetime, and I got to actually write my own job description, and I've been doing the same job ever since.
Okay, so you are involved with the athlete, and you are also involved with the commentary part of on challenge, right?
Yes, and if you think about it, I spend a lot of time every day actually on my computer conversing with pro athletes, and also when I'm at the races, one of my roles is to take care of the pro athletes, make sure everything's okay with them. And so I know the athletes inside out. I get to hang around them a lot. I get to chat to them. I know their ups, their downs, and everything in between. So I think the role of commentator, it makes sense because I know these athletes, and I don't just know their results, but I know the hardships that they've been through, and as I said, the ups, the downs, and everything in between. So it's sort of a really nice synergy to be able to do the both. On the one hand, look after the professional athletes, get them to races, and then on the other hand, I get to talk about them when they're racing, and I love having both those roles, to be honest.
I think it's a great thing because the very often and I would like to say that in the triathlon world so far we haven't been blessed with great coverage, great transmission, and great commentary. It's changing in the past year. I mean, we've seen uh, even after the first T100 series this year, we had a lot of people complaining about the quality of the coverage. But I was just encouraging them to go back like 5 or 10 years before, and the commentary was just basically there was nothing.
Nothing.
And
Yeah.
our sport is still growing on this side of things, and it's very complicated. And having someone which is just commenting about the race is boring as fuck, especially a race
Yeah.
like we do, like 6, 7, 8 hours of racing. I mean, you must have someone behind the mic which is able to tell a story, to who know exactly the athlete and everything. And this is all this story who are making great commentary and entertaining time. And I think you fit perfectly. And I found also that Rini, she was doing a fantastic job at the T100 recently,
Yeah.
Winnie and Jan, because they are still hands in, they know the sport inside out, and they have great insight from, and they know all the athletes. Because if you have to comment on athlete that you don't know, that's very complicated.
It is. And I think the mistakes that were made way back, and I'm talking way back during our time when commentary was live commentary was quite new. You often had people in the roles that were commentators. That was their profession, but they didn't necessarily know anything about not just the athletes, I know, but the sport itself. And so you could tell straight away when a commentator has no idea what they're talking about, whether it be the athletes or the actual sport. And so now I think we really have started to evolve. And yes, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's perfect, because it isn't perfect. It's still a work in progress. But you're right. I think sometimes we need to just sit down and take a look back at the beginning and how bad it was and where we are now. And it's improved so much. And you've got your commentators, who I think your anchors, who it's important that we have an anchor that knows commentary, but then you also need your experts that know the sport, know the athletes, and they're your Jan Fredinos and your Rini Carfrays, and they're the ones that know the athletes, that can tell the stories. And you've nailed it. It's all very well for us to go and do research as expert commentators, and that's what they call us, and know about an athlete's results, and that's fine. But how many results can we actually keep telling? And you're right, talking about a race when there's not much movement, when there's not much happening in a long distance race. It's all about telling stories and allowing the listener to actually start feeling some compassion for certain athletes. That's how we have superstars. We say it all the time, F1 nails it to perfection. Everyone has their F1 driver that they follow, that they love, that they go for. And you ask yourself, well, why? Why does someone like Lewis Hamilton over Max Verstappen? It's because of the stories told about these particular drivers. And that's how they become so popular and also passionate. You become passionate about it. I watch F1. I'm not motor crazy, but I still watch the F1 and I still have the drivers that I go for. And I'm quite passionate about it. And the reason is because I've heard the stories about them, and I like them because of these stories that are told. And I think we need to do that a little bit more in triathlon. We've got some great personalities in triathlon, and I don't think we tell their stories enough.
Yeah, you're right. And this is one thing that the PTO with the T100 series, they are doing quite well at the moment, is between races, you start to have stories and
Absolutely.
stuff and
Yeah.
rivalry, friendship, and this kind of stuff. And I just, this morning on my feed popped up the moment when Sam Long passed Sam Laidlaw in Miami. And we all know that this guy had a great rivalry, but then Sam just giving a tap on the ass. And I found it was nice. I found it was really nice that they caught this moment on screen and they use it for promoting the sport. Because at the end of the day, I mean, our sport is fantastic. It's aesthetic. We have great characters. We have we have equity between ladies and men, which is
Yep.
not very often in a
No,
lot of sport.
not at all.
And I'm still waiting to have a Formula One driver, which is a female, but it's not happening, you know. And we always made the parallel.
I think it's in the work. It's working. I mean, we've got. I think there's some women in the lower. They're like the F2, F3. But one day that would be just the absolute ultimate. And I haven't given up on it happening. I think it will happen eventually.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, the last time, because when you have a podcast, you have all the figure about your podcast, from where the listener are, who are they, and all this stuff. And last week we did a check, and we discovered that 54% of our listeners are actually women.
Wow. It's a fantastic,
So,
yes,
and
what a stat.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, it was super surprising, because if we look at the number of the French Federation, we are about 60,000 people with a French license, and only 20,000 are women. So that's 1/3, 2/3. So I was really surprised. And recently we had an interview with Imogen Simmons, and Imo, she's a great character. I mean, you know her very well, and she really pulled a quantity of lady in the sport. She really bring a lot of female listener to the podcast, and it's amazing to see, because this sport very often is seen as a male sport, you know. And
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
with the separation between female and male for Kona, I mean, we can be pro or against that, but at the end of the day, having the ladies to have their own days it's very important for me. And I remember Zofingen, when in the early 90s, when I was racing, Zofingen was called the power woman at the time. And I remember the lady, they were starting with a time difference from the year before. And the first to cross the line was actually
the winner.
called the winner overall. Yeah, yeah. And that was a great thing. Keep on it. I wanted to talk about something with you, because very often, I mean, you were married with a triathlete, Justin.
Yep. Yes.
And in
Some
our
some
sport,
may think I'm
we have,
crazy, but you know.
but we have a lot of couple who are both racing. Like we had Rini and Theo, Rich and Lucy. And you know, in the professional world outside of triathlon, very often the women are giving their career because of their husband. When you have a couple with a guy, let's say, who have a very high responsibility, very high ranked job, very often the woman, she's just giving her career to follow the husband. I found in triathlon, it's not that true. And very often we've seen some male athletes giving their career for their woman. And look at Lucy and Reed. We know us quite well, but I always got the feeling that at some point Justin just let go his professional career just to support you a little bit more. Is it correct? Yeah.
No, absolutely. And the funny thing about that is, when I first got into the sport of triathlon, I obviously didn't know Justin. He was already racing pro, so he was a very good junior. Back in the day, when he was a junior triathlete, he was racing the likes of Greg Bennett in that era and doing very, very well. And I started as an age group athlete with no aspirations of becoming a professional athlete. I just did it for fun. It was a way of getting fit again after I'd let myself go a little bit in the early stages of university. The sport looked like good fun. I thought, well, I'm never going to get bored doing triathlon. It's 3 different disciplines. And so it never crossed my mind to even contemplate taking it up as a professional career. One, I didn't think I was going to be good enough. But it was actually Justin. I met Justin very early on when I was racing as an age group athlete. He was the one that actually said to me, you know, you really should start to take this more seriously, because I think you've got what it takes to do this sport professionally. And so I have him to thank for that, because there's no way I would have done it without him. And this is way back when we were dating. And for a while there, we were able to have our careers together, and we were both racing professionally, but still holding down full-time jobs. And it was fine. But once we both decided that it was time to do this properly, to do it 24/7, I gave up my job firstly as a teacher. He stayed on just to have a little bit of financial security. But when we realized that we were going okay, we had some good sponsors behind us, I was making good prize money, he gave up his job, and we both became fully fledged professional athletes. And it was probably I would say 2 or 3 years into that part of my career, that he had said, you know what, you're the one that's really doing well. You're the one that I think could really go the next level and be one of the best in the world. So I am going to still race, but I'm going to take a little bit of a back seat here, and I'm going to make sure that all the major races, like the World Championships, it's going to be all about you. And he sort of fit his racing in around my important races. He would always be there for the big races, the ones that counted. And then when he could fit in a race for himself, he would do that. And I'm forever grateful to this day for that, because you're dead right. We didn't sit down and talk about it per se, but it was pretty obvious that that's exactly what happened. I don't think he has any regrets over it, because we had such an incredible career, and both of us, and such an incredible time living and training overseas, visiting countries, making friends. Really, I think about it now, and this is one of the reasons I love doing podcasts and talking to people like you that have been in the sport as long as I have. The memories that we've got and that we've made, the friendships that we still have to this day, nothing will ever beat it. I don't regret it for a second. It's just been the most incredible ride. And we're just so lucky in the sport of triathlon that we're able to have such long careers. Not many sports in the world where you get to say you're a pro athlete for almost 20 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, very long career, the ability to visit very, very nice place. And, I'm in this sport for almost 35 years
Yeah. Wow.
as an age grouper. And today I'm 55, and we were talking about that with Winnie the other day, and we were counting our friend, and I say 99% of the friends we have, they are inside the triathlon bubble.
Same as me.
And
Yep.
and it's crazy, and you take your phone or you send a message and you say, I would like to interview you, or I would like to talk about that. And there is always someone which is responding.
Yep.
And one of Mika is into triathlon. He has always been. The poor guy was very loaded with genetic because of me about that. But our Mika is out of school now, and we were looking for a training camp, and at the moment he's at a training camp with Sam Ledlow.
Wow.
So
what an experience, though. He loves it. Oh.
Yeah. We met Richard last year, end of last year, and then I send him a text and I say, would you be able to have a look at Mika taking him? And he said, fine, just he come whenever you want. And there is no other sport like that.
No.
You can't make it up.
No.
You call people are there. Recently, I sent a message to Pete Murray. I said, I would like to have you on the podcast. He said, just say when you want. It really feels like a family. And this is where the challenge family stuff really coming through, because I found that they are really pushing it to another level. One of our first podcasts, I wanted to have someone of importance in the triathlon world, and I sent a message to Felix, and he said, just fine. Just let me know when you are available. And we had Felix Valchofer, for a small podcast who was just starting and everything, and he was really open. And when I asked him, there is any subject or question you don't want to talk about, he said, whatever.
He's an open book, and that's why I think everyone loves Felix. And it's interesting you bring Felix up, because obviously I'm extremely close to him and his family, but he's very much like Mika. He was brought up from a very young age in the sport, right in the thick of triathlon, and obviously once his father passed away, he took the reins. And so very, very, not the same story as Mika, but Mika grew up with you. He knew nothing but triathlon, and it's a very similar story. And I look at Felix now, and obviously I was there when he was a young boy, and to see how far he's come and to see what he's been able to do with the race, it's truly remarkable, because this is a young man that he never intended to take on Roth. It was his father's domain, and he was forced into it at first. Of course, he loved it, but he had his own aspirations of becoming a pilot. I'm not sure if he spoke about that on the podcast, but he had his own career path that he wanted to take. And obviously, once his father passed, his mother couldn't do it on her own, and he was the logical person to take over. And of course, now the rest is history. He loves it, and Roth is his race. His family do such an incredible job. But yeah, I've seen him just grow from a young boy to what he is now, a young man who's taken over one of the most incredible races in the world. So my hat's off to Felix. He's an exceptional human being. He really is.
Yeah. That's very much the right word, exceptional human being. And last time I raced Roth was in 2021, I think, and I arrived. They were still building the stadium, and I was just hanging around. We were there the week before, and I saw a guy arriving with a worker outfit and heavy gloves, and it was Felix. He was loading and unloading, and then on race day you see him on a motorbike, and then the next day he is the one doing the presentation. I mean, Roth is Felix. Is It is everything this guy is friendly, is
Yep.
open, is very accessible, super bright, and I've been racing I think close to 10 times now there, and every time you see him, he is hands on. He's working on it, and you can see it's very much his baby.
It
Is
is.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the team which is around him is, we always say that you need a great leader to have a great team, but definitely he is that, and this race is something else.
Yep. It really
It's
is. I'm already excited to go back this year. I can't wait. It's going to be incredible. Again.
Yeah. How many time it will be for you?
Oof. Well, my first one was 2004, and I've only missed 2 times. So once was COVID, and once was in the mid 2000s. I couldn't get there, and I remember I let Laura Bennett, so Greg Bennett's wife, I let her stay with my homestay, and that was the only other year I'd missed. So I've been going every year since 2004, bar those 2 years. So it's crazy. I raced at 10. I won in 2005, and I raced it 10 times, and then I've been working there ever since. Funny though, when I retired from racing, my job there firstly was to be on the back of the motorbike like Felix, and just to do the social media updates for the pro athletes. I used to do the social media updates for the men, and Victoria Murray Orr, who works for Challenge Family as well, was in charge of doing the social media updates for the women. So then they finally got live coverage, and that's when I took on the live coverage. So it's incredible to see how far it's come, and yeah, I know this year is going to be just as special, if not more.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that I always found, because when you do a race, year after year, you can see sometimes the city is changing, the ambience is changing for the best or for the worst.
Worst, yep.
But one thing I can say is Roth, every time you go there, the experience remained the same. You can imagine that saying, okay, yeah, I've seen Solarberg last year. This year is not going to be as special. Every time I'm racing there, you arrive 1 kilometer from the bottom of Solarberg, and you hear the people, you hear the noise, and I still got goosebumps just thinking about that.
Oh, it's crazy. It is
There
crazy.
is no other place like that.
No. And I think you've nailed it there, and it doesn't change, because you're right. I think sometimes with races, particularly when they're put on in towns and roads are shut down, etc., and locals sometimes get a bit upset, there is a little, let's be honest, there's a shelf life. And I think sometimes locals can get a little bit upset that they're put out for that week when the athletes come. We've seen it in Kona. We've even seen it here at the Noosa Triathlon. The Noosa Triathlon is an incredible Olympic distance race, and it's huge. But last year, for the first time ever, we had a few signs up, no more triathlon, and a couple of the local people in the community were getting the shits with it, and it's just part and parcel. But you know what? I have never once in the time I've been going since 2004 have I seen any upheaval or locals in the area getting upset. They are so behind the race. They are so incredibly proud of the race. They've taken it on like it's their own. And you've done, as you said, you've done Roth over 10 times. It's not just in the town of Roth. I mean, we take over so many suburbs and villages outside of Roth, and all of these villages get out on race day and they make a day out of it. They set up picnic tables, and they stay out there for hours all day long, drinking and eating and really making a party of it. And there are not too many races in the world where you see that happening year after year after year.
Yeah, and where Felix has been really, really good, I found, is because the course has changed along the year. The run course has changed. Now the bike course has changed a little bit. It's part of any race which is lasting for that long, I guess. But they managed to keep the interest super, super high. They managed to keep a very, very nice course, and to have people all along. I mean, it's crazy. The run course in Roth, if you cut the canal part, there is people everywhere, and even along the canal, you have guys on the bike, you have people at the aid station. It's like, this kind of oasis along the canal, and you arrive at an aid station, and there is 100 people there, and then you arrive at the U-turn, and it's crazy again, and then when you go back in town, it's madness. It's I just love it. I just love this race.
Me too. It's one of those races that I think, whenever I talk about it, I just have the biggest smile on my face. I can't help myself. It's the most contagious race in the world. It really is. I love it. I don't know anyone that's been there that doesn't fall in love with it like I have.
Yeah, and if you look at the area, there is nothing special.
No,
I mean, it's not like Kona, it's not like Nusa, it's like Bavaria, it's a simple village, but then you arrive and, I mean, literally the triathletes are taking over the area. You have people in the radius of 50 kilometers, everybody is staying, all the hotels are booked, all the Airbnb are booked. It's crazy that the interest for this race year after year after year, and I think we really have to thank Felix for the job that his team are doing and what he's doing, because that's such an iconic race in the world, and I really hope that the T100 maybe in the future would try to have a race in this area, because it would be fantastic to have something like that in this area under Roth organization. Would be amazing.
It would be fantastic for sure.
One other race I wanted to talk with you about is Challenge Wanaka. We used to race together when it was the full
distance, wasn't it? And wasn't it a hard full distance? Oh God!
Oh my God!
Oh my God! Shit!
Oh. And the weather was always something.
Yeah. Oh, I loved it. Look, it's still one of the most scenically beautiful races in the world. I was there again this year, and it's just absolutely spectacular. I remember one year doing the full distance race there, and the wind was blowing that hard that I started laughing to myself. I was right down the far end of the course down at Cromwell, and I knew, I had to get
on the out and back.
On the out and back, and I knew that, I was going to have to come home into a headwind. And there was one point there I looked down at my Speedo and it read 6K an hour. And I thought, fuck, I'm never going to get home. I actually started laughing to myself. I thought I am never going to make it back to transition because this is insane. I think I was coming second at the time. There was an athlete in front of me. And unfortunately, once we turned off this main road, we had a really nasty side wind. And she literally got blown off her bike. It was horrific. Couldn't continue. So I was not too bad. I think being a little bit of a heavier athlete, I was lucky in that regard. And I'd also had a very big Christmas. So I was a few kilos overweight for that race that year. And I tell you, it was a blessing in disguise because I stayed on my bike and I did make it to the finish. But to this day, that was one of the toughest days physically and mentally that I've ever had in the sport. But Arno, they're the bloody races you remember. You don't remember the easy ones. You don't remember the ones where you do the crazy fast times. I remember the races that I had to work so hard for, mentally, physically, emotionally. They're the races that you remember when you look back at your career. One year I went sub-9 in Roth, but I can tell you what time I did, but I can't tell you anything about the race per se. I can't even remember it. I just know that it was a fast day and I went fast. But that race in Wanaka, and I think there was also another race in China that I did, and just brutal. And when I talk about races now to people, when they ask me about my favourite experiences, okay, my favourite experience, of course, was when I won Roth in 2005. But the experiences where I remember every single second were the ones that you had to fight hand, tooth and nail for because the conditions were so bloody hard. And I just wonder, sometimes I think triathletes have gotten a little bit soft in that, we like the fast. Everyone goes hunting for the fast courses or the fast roads or where there's not going to be so much wind or it's not going to be hot. I hear a lot of people say, oh, no, the T100, some of the women aren't turning up there because it's long travel and it's going to be hot and humid. Shit, I used to love those races. They were the races that I flocked to because I knew that it was just a war of attrition. They're the ones that I depended on, and everyone dropped like flies and I was just the last woman standing. And I think sometimes we've forgotten that that's what triathlon's all about. It was never meant to be an easy sport. That's why we all bloody chose it. We didn't choose it to be because we wanted to be, because it was easy or because it was super fast. We chose it because it was bloody hard. And sometimes I think we've lost our way a little bit with that. But sorry, I'm going off on a big tangent now.
No. But I think, and we are very much on the same page on that. And I mean, it's called Ironman. It's not called Easy Man, right?
No,
so
exactly.
And at some point, I think today you see, oh, I'm not doing this race because the swimming condition can be harsh, or it's going to be windy, or it's going to be cold. Fuck it. I mean, just at some point, we just have to go with it. And a race, and I think I was there in Wanaka when you won the race. It's the condition we had this day. We had the four season. We had pissing rain at the beginning of the run. After, I remember running along the lake, and I saw a wall of black cloud coming towards us, and it was just like crazy. And like 20 minutes after, it was soaring hot, wind, rain, hail, and everything. And as you say, this is what really make the race memorable. And having a tough course. Look at the Laguna Phuket Triathlon, for example. It's hard.
Absolutely.
It's a hard race.
That's why I love it. I mean, I'm so glad you brought that race up because, it's one of the very few independent races left. We don't have that many successful independent races that are left now. And it is truly such an iconic race. And I know Imogen Simmons is actually there with Anne Reichman at the moment training. So she's in, training out at Tanyapura there to prepare for Singapore, which is fantastic. And, I've done that race. Actually, that race I have raced more, and I've been there more than any other race that I've done in the world. That's how much I love that race. And I love how hard the bike is. I love that, the last 10 kilometres are 3 lots of 17% climbs in horrendous heat and humidity. And then that 12K run is just so humid. And it's cracked so many of the best athletes in the world. But it's an incredible race in absolute paradise, and I love that race is still going, and it still gets some brilliant athletes there every year. And I hope it is one of those races that never ever goes away, because it's truly one of my absolute bucket list races. Whenever anyone asks me about bucket list races, that is my bucket list race. I love the Laguna Phuket Triathlon.
Yeah, that's a very special race. And I remember you were talking about the humidity, and I remember 1 year before the start, I was warming up and I saw that they were watering the golf course. And I was thinking, Jesus fucking Christ.
We're in trouble.
What are they doing? And then after the bike, when we started running on it, it was just like a cloud at 1 meter high. It was just like going in a sauna. It was crazy. We have this kind of iconic race like Nusa, Laguna Phuket, Escape from Alcatraz, l'Alpe d'Huez, and all these things. And sometimes I'm dreaming and I say, maybe the PTO would be well inspired to try to join this kind of event, because they are historic race.
Absolutely, yeah.
They all have their specificity, which can, remember Wildflower also, which was a crazy race
brilliant race
on its own.
Yep.
We have this race all around the world, and they are all different. They all have their specificity, and this race have made our sport.
Absolutely,
this is what keeps us dreaming.
They were the bread back in the day. They were the bread and butter. They really were, and I think they're of huge importance moving forward as well. And okay, they're not big money races. They're not big titles. But if you look back at the history books, particularly, as you said, Nusa Triathlon, Laguna Phuket Triathlon, Wildflower, Alpe d'Huez, some of the greatest athletes in the world have won these races. They didn't go there to win huge price checks, because there were not huge price checks on offer. They've gone there because these races mean something. They meant something. And I think I like to look at these races. They are more of a celebration of our sport rather than, becoming world champion or winning $1 million. They're a celebration, and for the athlete as well. And I used to love finishing the year. Obviously, Laguna Phuket was at the end of November. It always used to fall around my birthday. So I used to celebrate by doing the race. And then yourself, the after parties at Laguna Phuket are historic. It's the best in the world. They still are. And, that's all part and parcel of the reason I got into the sport in the first place. And I love it. I think these races are really, really important. They're important in the beginning, and I still think they're important to this day.
Yeah, you're right, 100%. And you're correct. The after party in Phuket is something I remember. One year I lost my moped, I lost my shoes, and I lost my shirt. So
Well, the shirts always, we're all responsible for the reason you lost the shirts. I don't know where that tradition, when it started, but I remember that always at one point during the night, it was compulsory that all men lost their shirts. I still have vivid memories one year of Marinda didn't get to go that time, but T.O. was there. So Tim was there. He'd won the race. He had a great race. And all the boys were up on stage doing the YMCA, and they all took their tops off, and he was up on stage, and he was so drunk that he didn't even realise he was riding the pony. He was riding a pretend pony round and round and round on the stage, and we're all just looking and going, I really don't think he knows what he's doing right now. But I have got this vivid memory of Tio up on stage having the time of his life, just in his own little world, and it was unreal. It's just a fantastic race. Actually, they're celebrating their 30th anniversary, I believe, this year. So we are actually looking, I had an idea of trying to get some of our past legends, so winners back, to do like a relay team. So imagine how cool that would be to get, say, Craig Alexander, Simon Thompson, some of the great, yourself, the greatest of the greats raced there back in the day. I mean, Mike Pigg used to race there way back. Yeah. Incredible athletes.
I think Scott Molina
has been there. Yep. Aaron Baker's raced there. Paula Newby-Fraser's raced there. Everyone. I mean, if you Google the results from Laguna Phuket from way back in the day, Greg Welch has won there. It's incredible. It's an incredible list of athletes, the best athletes that our sport's ever seen. Just imagine getting a few of them back. They don't have to do the whole run. We could do like a relay, like a cool relay teams. It'd just be so cool to have them all back. So I'm really hoping that we can organise something for this year's anniversary.
Good. That would be fantastic. There was something I wanted to talk with you, because you trained for a while in Europe, right? At the beginning, at some point in your career, you were in the squad with under Brett Sutton, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I think we were trying to remember. Actually, someone asked me the other day how many years we were there, and I think it was maybe 3. It could have possibly been 4, but it was at least 3 years in Les Arts in Switzerland. And obviously also we spent quite a lot of time in Thailand as well, in Phuket, but predominantly in Switzerland, in Les Arts for many years. I love, it's funny, coming from Australia or New Zealand, you either choose 2 places. You either choose Europe and you base yourself in Europe and race the European season, or you base yourself in the States. I tried the States. It just wasn't for me. As soon as Justin and I went to Europe, we fell in love with it, and we went back to Europe every year from there on in. And it was Switzerland for a good chunk of our career, and finished up in Spain in Marbella. We did quite a few years there as well at the end. And I still love Europe. Even now, I'm getting ready to go back over for race season in May. And obviously being such a long flight, I know I don't like to keep coming back and forth. So I will be in Europe for 2 months. And I have a short period of time where I get to choose where I want to base myself. And I'm going back to Girona, I think, for the 3rd or 4th time now, because it's just such a beautiful town. I love it there. It's easy. Barcelona airport's very, very close, but I just love the European way. It's always been something that I've been able to just step on into very, very easily. So, yeah, I love going back to Europe each year.
When you were in Switzerland, it was the time of the team TBB, right?
It was. Well, actually, when I first joined, that didn't exist. But I think after about probably a year to 18 months of being in that squad, Alex Bock came on board and sponsored the team, and it became Team TBB, yes.
Because I interviewed Alex last week.
Yes.
So talking mostly about his career and the Coup Cycle adventure that he's launching at the moment. And and that's why we talk a little bit about this period. And I was thinking, I'm sure Belinda at some point she trained under Brett Sutton there. How was it to train under Brett Sutton at this time?
Look, it was funny. It's funny. I loved it. I'm a creature of habit and I love routine, and that's exactly what we got in that squad. Every day was the same. You would turn up to the pool at 7 a.m. You would have no idea what you were doing for the day. You would swim, obviously, you knew that. And then we'd all get out of the pool and we would individually be told what we would be doing for the day training-wise. And I loved it because you just knew that you would eat, sleep, train, repeat. That's just what you did up in the mountains. There was nothing else to do. So there was no outside influence. It was also back in the day, I know, where there was no bloody social media. So back then, Instagram, I don't even think Instagram was a thing. I certainly wasn't on it. I think Facebook had started, so Facebook was about it. But even getting on the internet where we were up in the mountain was quite difficult. It wasn't easily accessible. And let me tell you, how bloody easy was it back in the day when there was no social media? You just got on with business. You didn't waste any time. No one knew what you were doing. You were just training, going about your business. You would rock up to a race. No one would know what type of form you were in, whether you'd been injured or sick. And it just made it so much more interesting. Now, of course, we turn up to races and we know everything. In fact, sometimes we know too much. So social media, as great as it is, it's also, I think it was a lot easier back in my day when social media didn't exist like it does today. I think it's really tough for professional athletes now when you think about it. It's like the fourth discipline, really, social media. But yeah, I loved it. I loved living up there. I became exceptionally close to my training partners. One of my favourite training partners, of course, was Hilary Biscay. It was a simple life, it really was. My friends up there were Hilary Biscay, Chrissy Wellington. A big night out was going to the cinema. They had a cinema up there, and every now and again we'd go to the movies. But that's about as exciting as it got. So yeah, it was good times, and there was no secret to our success. It was just that we mentally knew that when we lined up on a start line, we were going to be the fittest athletes on the start line. Now, that didn't necessarily mean that you were going to automatically win, but it did mean that you are the fittest on the start line. So as long as you went in confident that there was no one else that had done the work you'd done. And it's amazing having that mental image in your head, knowing that you are that fit and that you are fitter than anyone else. It's almost like you grew wings. And I knew most of the races where I lined up and I did end up winning, I wasn't the best athlete on the start line. I wasn't that, to be honest, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, I wasn't that bloody talented, to be honest. I think I had showed some talent on the bike. If you ask Sutter to this day, he's still, I know, with athletes that he coaches now, he uses me as one of the shittiest pool swimmers he's ever seen in his life. But I was great at sitting feet, so I used to get out on women's feet that were way better swimmers than me. I was just good at sitting feet. And then, for the run, it was always just a battle of attrition for me on that run. And I think the greatest thing that because we were up in a mountain and we weren't influenced by anything else except for training every day, I think that's what is the reason that I won so many races throughout my career. Because really, I know, as I said, I don't think I was that naturally gifted as an athlete. I think I was just a hard ass, basically.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say, because I think that today, even when we were racing in the 90s, you arrive at the start line, you see the other athlete, but you don't really know how fit they are, if they were injured and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in the 24 hours before the race, there was still some gossip. Oh, this guy is a little bit injured, or he might have been sick last week. And it was amazing how it was playing with my mind to know that this guy might be super fit or might have been a little bit sick. Today with the social media, that's permanent information which is coming from any other athlete around. And it's crazy when I'm seeing that athlete, like, let's say, like the top guys at the moment, like Sam Laidlaw or Lucy Charles, the quantity, the time they have to spend to create content every day, it's crazy. And it must be super, super hard to try to isolate yourself at some point, to not be bombarded permanently by this information about your competition. And I think it could be, I can only guess, but I think it's very easy to mess up with your brain at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe that's a reason why, you see the T100 recently, the quantity of athletes who dropped out or were not there, and the same with Singapore. Look at the women field. I think on the 20th, on the 16 contracted women, there is only 6 or 7 who are going to turn up to Singapore, because it's going to be hot, because it's going to be hard, because some are injured, because you know that this one, she is coming, so you might not get the point and everything. This constant flux of information at some point must be messing with a lot of people, I guess.
Absolutely. And anyone that says that it isn't is sorry about this, is full of shit, because you can be as tough as nails, but it's hard not to. And I know quite a few athletes that put social media down. So some athletes decide, a few days out, no social media, I'm getting off, I'm going to focus on the race. And it's the best thing to do, because I think if I was a professional athlete now and I was constantly flicking through my Instagram and seeing this information and seeing athletes, what they're doing, thinking they're doing more than me, doing less than me, they're faster than me, they're posting times that are better than mine, like you said, continually bombarded with this, and it doesn't matter how tough you are, it's got to play a part on you mentally. And that's tough, because at the end of the day, all of these athletes that we see lined up, particularly in the T100, the 20 of the best athletes in the world, they're all as good as each other. It's those athletes that mentally have that little bit extra that make it out on top. And I wonder, I get, my nickname in triathlon is Mother Hen, because I do give a shit about these athletes, and I do care about them physically, mentally, emotionally. And I hate it when I see athletes that are at their rock bottom or that are struggling. And we know that we've had several athletes that have been like this, and it's gut wrenching, because I look back at my career and, okay, I'm not going to sit here and say I loved every single day of the 20 odd years I was in it, but let's be honest, 99.9% of it was bloody good, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I want to make sure that every professional athlete finishes their career on a high, and finishes it knowing, okay, there was some shitty times, but let's be honest, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. I don't want pro athletes to walk away being a little bewildered or bitter and twisted, because it's an incredible thing to be a professional athlete in any sport. And it's an amazing career, an amazing world. So it just worries me sometimes that with this, like you said, with this social media, with the bombardment of knowledge and continually in your face, if you aren't disciplined to be able to put your phone down and put it away, I worry for some athletes, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're right. And recently we saw in some of the young pro up and coming, they were trying to take the glamorous part out of the sport, and we heard a lot of them talking, saying, being a professional athlete is not as nice as I was believing. It's harder than what I was thinking. But at the end of the day, when you turn pro, you make your hobby your job. That's complicated for sure, but you still have the chance to make your hobby as a job. And I believe that's still 100 times more fun than going to a factory making components for a car industry or anything. So just, sucking it up a little bit, thinking that you are traveling the world, and sometimes, of course, you are not making maybe tons of money, but you are still making decent amount of money, especially looking at the T100 at the moment, all the contracted athletes. I don't think they can really complain.
No, look, and that's one thing we talk about with the PTO. Everyone's got an opinion, but at the end of the day, I've said it a million times now. If I could do life again, I'd be doing life again now. I wish the PTO was around when I was. Sorry, I should have said that probably. I wish the PTO was around when I was a pro athlete, because the amount of assistance, financially, opportunities that they've given, incredible. I would have taken it with open arms. It's amazing. And people are easily pick, but they're doing this wrong, but they're doing that wrong. At the end of the day, they're doing something for the pro athletes. So it's awesome. And I as I said, I think it's great. And it's also, the PTO hasn't just been great for the athletes, but it's been great for all of us. I know Challenge Family, we've really benefited from it as well. We use their ranking system now for our ranking system. We like to work together with them. And they've also, our racers have had to up their game as well to keep up. So I think it's been good for all of the sport. Now we have the Ironman Pro Series. Do you think we would have had the Ironman Pro Series if the PTO didn't exist?
No
because
chance.
I'm pretty bloody sure we wouldn't have. So you look at it like that, and I think it's been nothing but positive for pro athletes. And, back in my day when I started, and I never thought I'd be the person to say that back in my day, but I actually worked full-time when I was a professional, because at the end of the day, sponsorships weren't huge, and I relied on prize money. So I knew that for a couple of years there, I was going to have to work, so I was financially stable, and then I was going to have to try and race a lot to make prize money, and that's just the way it was. You just did it, and then you wait till you get yourself to a certain state where you're financially, the stability's there. You can start to cut back your hours at work, and I think I was only working 2 days a week as a teacher, and then you get to a point in time, okay, I think I've got some good sponsorship behind me now. Now I can give up work and I can become a fully fledged professional athlete. And I think sometimes athletes don't go through that step-by-step process. They're rushing to. One of the best sayings Sato used to have was, I think it was something like rush slowly, or meaning that yes, we're always in a rush we want to be a pro athlete right now, but there's a step-by-step process to get to that, so that you can do it properly, so that you can do it comfortably. And I think sometimes a couple of those steps are missed out, and you go from being a good age group athlete, and then you just want to be racing pro with all the sponsors behind you, and it just doesn't work like that unless you are an incredible athlete. You look at someone like Lucy Charles-Barclay. She started as an age group athlete and worked her backside off to be one of the best long distance athlete in the world right now. She would laugh if she was listening to some of the pro athletes that think it's just, you go from here to here in one step. You look at the step process she's had to take to get where she is today, and it's been a bloody long process, I can tell you that.
Yeah. I wanted to have, because you were inside the Soto team, you were there when you saw Chrissy Wellington arrive, or she was already there with you?
No, she arrived. It's actually a really funny story. We'd been in Phuket for quite some time, and you know yourself, when you live and train in Phuket in Thailand, it's great for the first few weeks, but then it starts to take its toll because you are dehydrated. You basically get sucked dry because you're continually training in exceptionally hot and humid conditions. You just want some normal Western food every now and again, and it's tough. And I remember Chrissy turning up one day. I think we'd been in Thailand for at least 4 or 5 weeks, and we were tired, and typical Sato, he didn't tell us she was coming. And, a squad becomes very, very protective. And we were protective of our own, and we didn't like any outsiders coming in, because all of us were this one little tiny group. And actually, you know who was in that group at the time? Sam Renouf was in that group. Sam Renouf trained with us with Sato. Yep, for years. So I've known Sam for many, many years, and he was in the group then. And I remember
even didn't know he used to race at some point.
Yeah, he was a professional athlete. Don't think he was a very good one. I hope he's not going to listen to this. But yeah, he was trying to make it as a pro athlete, and he trained with us in camp for quite some time. Yep, in both Les Arts in Switzerland and also in Phuket. But Chrissy turned up one day, and she was, of course, really excited and bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go. And we were all getting on our tuk-tuk to the swimming pool. Oh, here we go again. And she talked I remember that day she talked non-stop all the way to the pool. And I thought, who is this girl driving me insane? I'm about to strangle her. And, she had it tough. We weren't particularly nice to her. I'll be honest, we weren't particularly nice, because she was an outsider coming in. We'd been there. We'd done the hard yards. She hadn't. She was just allowed to float on in. That's how we felt. You don't think when you're tired and grumpy and overtrained. And it took a long time before we accepted her into the fold. But let me tell you, we knew from day dot that she was something bloody special. Terrible swimmer. So when she started with us, she could not swim to save her life. But her bike skills were horrendous. But her strength and her engine on the bike and the run were unbelievable. Even to this day, I remember she couldn't run with any of us. None of us were fast enough for her. So Sado was continually putting her with the men, and unfortunately, my husband was the one that she got stuck with a lot. And he was just blown away with how unbelievably strong she was. And then obviously once Sado taught her to swim, and then once she got some bike skills behind her, well, the rest is history. She was just way ahead of her time. Incredible athlete.
Yeah, that's because I was already in triathlon at this time, obviously, and I remember we saw her arriving from an age group perspective, and she was she was like a shooting star, you know. Every race she was turning up, she was going higher, she was brighter, she was faster. It was incredible, really incredible. And one of my strongest memory I have from her was when she raced in Roth. She ran, I think, 236 or 238 on along the canal. We were in Singapore, and I was watching the footage after the race, and I was thinking, how the hell this thing is possible? She was so bloody fast. I think she has the second or third fastest running time this year. So
Yep. She was next level, and she was certainly way ahead of her time. And the funny thing is, the reason that she joined Sado and the reason that she was coming there in the first place, because she wanted to make the Olympics. She had no intention of going long course. It wasn't something that had even entered her brain. She wanted to come to Sado to learn how to swim so that she could try and make the Olympics for Great Britain. She came from an Olympic distance background, and that's what she'd set her mind on. And I think Sado, the reason he took her on originally was for that particular reason, but as soon as he started to look at her and that diesel engine of hers, he's like, no, you're not going to make it as an Olympian, but you're going to be the greatest long-distance athlete our sport has ever seen. And he was right. I mean, that's one of the things that Sado is so incredibly good at, is just reading an athlete. And, you know, the thing with Chrissy is I think she could have gone on to win so many more titles, but it wasn't, she'd gone as far as she wanted or needed to go. She'd set the fastest time ever, and she'd won Roth, and she'd won the World Championships. And at that stage, there was no more really left to do. And so that was time to move on. And I think, you know, sad for us, because I think she still could have done some incredibly special things, but it was the right move. It was the right thing for her. And we got to see Chrissy last year in Roth. She came back, and she's still the same beautiful, bubbly, crazy Chrissy that we remember. You know, she's married now. She's got a little girl, and she is happy. And she's still doing some incredible things. She's still heavily involved with Park Run in the UK, and also Park Run for Kids. I still follow her and on social media. She's not on there that often, but she's an amazing woman, and she's still doing amazing things.
yeah, it's a beautiful story. The way she get into the sport, she rise to the top, and then decided on her own, and not because of an injury, not because of anything else. She just decided, that's it, I'm done.
Yep.
It's over, finished.
Yep. It's time.
And yeah, it's time. And I think it's not very often that we have athletes like that who can decide under their own power to say, that's it, I'm turning the page now, I'm going to write something else. And it's a beautiful story. And it takes me to another athlete I wanted to have a word with you. It's someone which I remember used to live in Nusa. It's Pete Jacob.
Yep.
So because I met Pete in Singapore, he was coming with the BPM crew to do some training camp with us, and at the time where there was Freddie Cronenberg, and he was there, and I remember he gave me some swimming tips at some times. didn't work that well, but
I love it.
And Pete had a bit of the same story as Chrissy at the beginning, and how is he? Is he still living in Nusa? Because he's very quiet. We don't hear anything about him at the moment, and sometimes I always found that it was a bit of a sad story, because he was so talented. He had everything, and the way I mean, that's my feeling. I don't know if I'm right, but I think he lose a bit himself at some point, or he lose the motivation or something, and he just disappear from the sport, but from very different reason from Chrissy. So, do you still see him? Is he okay?
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you bring PJ up because yes, he is a very close friend of mine. I'm very close with his wife, Jamie L. They've got their little baby now, Maple, who's absolutely divine. And funny thing, where I live here in Noosa, PJ basically lives 400 meters down the road, so he's a neighbour. And I went out for dinner last Saturday night. So Craig Alexander was up here in Noosa doing Noosa Ultra Trail, which was on last weekend. He's an ambassador for the Noosa Ultra Trail series. Race day, and he was up here, and so Justin and I went out for dinner last Saturday night with Crowe and also Daniel Backergaard, who's over here training up for Singapore, for the T100 in Singapore. And so the four of us went out for dinner, and of course we started. Crowe, if you haven't ever been out with Crowe before, he is the greatest storyteller on the planet. Some of these stories I've heard 3-4 times, and I don't care. They are brilliant, and they get better every time. And he started telling some stories, and of course we were talking to Daniel about PJ and when he won the World Champs in Kona, and still to this day, it was the easiest win I've ever seen from any athlete ever at Kona. I remember watching him on that marathon, and he was stopping through the aid stations and taking drinks, walking through there, having a bit of a conversation with the volunteers. At one point he got out the other side and he was stretching his hamstrings. I'm like, for God's sake, buddy, you're winning the bloody race and you're walking through here like you've got all the time in the world. But that was, the in-betweens when he was running, it shows you how damn fast he was running. He was just an incredible athlete. And it's funny, I was saying to Crowe, that PJ, he was so insanely talented. But Crowe made a good point. When he won the World Champs, and it was a long time ago now, I was here when I remember the training he was doing. And Crowe said, no, he was just a bloody hard worker as well. He trained exceptionally hard that year. And he reaped the rewards at the end of the year at the World Champs. And so I think it was a combination of being ridiculous, like very, very talented young man, but also working really, really hard. The biggest downfall for PJ is he never kept a diary. Now, I know a lot of athletes now, back in the day, back in my day, I used to write everything down. Every session I ever did was written down, how it went. And, you'd go back and you'd look at those sessions, the ones that worked, the ones that didn't. And nowadays you do it all on the computer. But back then, PJ didn't write anything down. So I think when it came to trying to replicate, he had no bloody clue. He didn't know what he'd done. He hadn't written anything down, and it made it quite difficult for him to know what worked and what didn't work. And it is hard too, Anna. You think if you turn up, you win the World Champs, you win it that bloody easily. Next year comes along, how hard would it be? How difficult would it be to get that motivation to try and to do it all again? I don't know. I'm trying to get into the head of PJ. And I say this because he's a good friend and I love him, but he's a very interesting man. All right. I don't think his brain works the same way as a lot of other athletes' brains work. And it was a really difficult period for him. And I think he did lose his way. I agree with you. And I think sometimes athletes win a race, and I know Luke McKenzie did this after he got second at the World Champs in Kona. Okay, what can I change? What can I change? It's like, well, do you really need to change anything? Because you just got second in the World Championships. Is it a matter of changing, or is it a matter of just fine-tuning or just slightly tweaking things to try and then be on top of the podium? And I think sometimes athletes, if you're doing well, if you're coming top 3 in a world championship, I don't think you need to change a bloody thing. I think, as I said, it's just about fine-tuning what you're already doing. And sometimes I think people want to change everything. They go and get brand new coaches and try this, that, and the other. And I think that's what happened to PJ's. He just tried to change too much and he lost his way. And he did try to come back, and he did try to stay as an athlete, because it is difficult when you think, my career's not over yet. I've still got so much more to give. You turn up to a race and unfortunately it doesn't happen, and you think, okay, next race. And it's hard. It's a really difficult thing to say, you know what? I think it's time to hang up my shoes. I do think PJ has come to terms with the fact now that the time it's done, and he is back working. So he's still training up here, and but it's more just for the love of it and for the fun of it, because at the end of the day, PJ does the sport because he loves it, and he always did. He started as an age group athlete that loved the sport, lucky enough to become a world champion. And I've said this many times to his wife, once you're a world champion, you can never, ever have that taken off you. You are world champion for the rest of your life. And you do not fluke a win at a World Championships. I've always said that sometimes you can fluke wins at other races, but a World Championship race, you never
No,
fluke a win. You win it, you deserve to win
and
it.
not in Kona.
Absolutely not in Kona. So, he should be very proud. And I think, he's doing really well now. Now that I think he's accepted that his career it's done and he's moving to the next phase in his life. And he's such a great father. And both him and his wife really, little Maple is absolutely gorgeous. She's the smiliest, happiest little child I've ever come across in my life. And they're just really, they're doing a really, really good job. And it's lovely to see them both in this next phase of their life.
It's good. Yeah, it's good because the last time I saw Pete, he was in 2016 at the Ultraman, and he was there at the finish. And you don't go to the finish line of an Ultraman if you don't love the sport, if you don't love athleticism, and if you don't, it's and it was already 4 years for him after his title at the World Champ, and I think these 4 years were pretty much complicated for him, but I'm glad that he managed to turn the page. And as you say, once you've been a world champion, it's for life. The title is changing hand every year, but you will still remain a world champion for the rest of your life, and that's very good to hear. Yeah, forever. And I'm really happy to hear that he's in a happy place. And if you see him, please send him my regards, because that's someone I really appreciate. And I remember when he was with us in Singapore, he was always not wary of his time, and it's someone I was really looking up to. And as you say, I remember we crossed paths on the Queen K in 2012, and I remember him coming towards me. He was coming back from the energy lab, and I was going there. He was looking so light on his feet. He was almost running like a ninja. He was not
Yes.
touching the ground, and he's a big guy, and he was so impressive. And that's one of the image I will keep with me forever. He was very, very impressive.
I remember it too, and it just seemed so effortless. Like, it just looked like he was doing it with ease. And it's very, very difficult to run a marathon on the Queen K and look like it's not hurting you. It's, even if you are winning, it's still it's one of the toughest marathons you'll ever do.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's already over 1 hour, Belinda. I want to be a bit mindful of your time, especially because you are in Nusa, and I think it's like 7 something past. That was great talking to you. I really appreciate you are very much part of our sport, and you are really someone that I'm looking up to. And the job you did when you were active as an athlete, and everything you are doing at the moment for the Challenge family, for the athletes, and everything for the commentary, I think is great. I think the world of triathlon need more Belinda Granger. And
You're a darling.
that,
Look, I'm like you. I think we got into the sport for all the right reasons back in the day. We are still in it for all of the right reasons. It's a fantastic sport. And the most important thing, I think, I love it now as much as I did when I first started back in the actually, and now I'm showing my age. I did my first triathlon back in 1988, but then so we're going back a long time, and I still love it. I still love it just as much now as I did back then. So I think that's the important part. I'm not in it because of anything else other than the sheer love of the sport.
Yeah, and sometimes when you talk with ex-pro athlete, you feel some bitterness about I used to be that fast, I used to be that strong. And I remember once I was talking with Jürgen Zach about that, and because he was racing in Singapore, he was racing Laguna Phuket, and he's a good friend of mine. And I was asking him, because he looked like he was always enjoying it, and you know how Jürgen is. Sometimes he sit back and he look at me and he say, "Well, Arno, there is a reason why there is age group in triathlon, because you can compete with people pretty much of your age, of your level."
Exactly.
I
love it.
And I was thinking that's so bloody true,
It's
and
perfect.
and
It's
being
perfect.
yeah. And it's also a state of mind, being able to enjoy. And I was very competitive. I've always been super competitive, and everything was about me. You have to be a bit selfish at some point. And now with Mika, growing up and going towards the sport of triathlon more and more, it's like a normal switch. I'm not the most important person in my life. The focus has been switching to my son. my my training is his training. So when he need to go riding, I go riding with him. When it used to be the other way around, and I found it's a beautiful sport. There is not many sport where you can keep, because if you look at any other sport, there is no other sport where ex-professional athletes are still enjoying racing their sport like 30 years after they started.
Precisely. It's
So
unreal.
that,
It's unreal. And that's one of the
yeah,
reasons I love it. It's the most inclusive, all-inclusive sport in the world. So, yeah, fantastic sport, and yeah,
good.
I can't wait.
I have one last question for you because you look amazingly fit. So
Looks
what's
can
your
be
day look
deceiving.
like?
Well, it's funny. Literally just had this conversation with someone because someone said to me the other day, "You're not interested in going back and racing age group. You're not interested in because obviously I'm good friends, really good friends with Beth McKenzie. She's doing incredible things in trail running right now, and obviously road running. And people say, oh, you don't enter any events of any description anymore. And I'm like, because I'm satisfied with what I've done in my career. I started as an age group athlete. I finished as a professional athlete, and I've raced my heart out, so to speak. And I've shut that door. I still train every day, twice a day, pretty much. Because not because I have to or because I think it's something I need to do. It's because it's something I want to do. I still really enjoy training. I enjoy the endorphins I get from pushing my body. I've just changed what I do. I still run, although I have a couple of little niggles now that don't prevent me running, but I don't run very fast anymore. But I do. I run now for the love of it. I've got a great women's group here. We're called the Noosa Run Babes, and they're the most magnificent women. They're my best friends, and we run every Sunday, anywhere from 14 to 20 kilometres, and we always finish with a coffee, and it's amazing. And then I do a lot of gym work. Obviously, I do F45 nearly every day. I did that this afternoon, which is HIIT training. And I joined another gym called Aloha Fitness, which is I do a lot of hot HIIT Pilates, which I never thought I'd do training in a hot room. After racing for so many years in Asia, I thought I would put that behind me, but believe it or not, I actually go to a room for an hour at 38 degrees Celsius and I do hot HIIT Pilates in this room, and I love it. So it's interesting. I think it's all about, I love the feeling of being fit and healthy. I think the benefits you get from being fit and healthy are just, are incredible. And as I say now, I love red wine. Everyone knows I love red wine. And so I train now to justify a glass of wine every night. So that's how I live. And if that's what I need to do to justify a nice glass of red, then so be it. But I think when you've been training for that long, regimented training for so long, and you know this, I know you were an incredible age group athlete. You trained just as hard as I trained as a professional athlete. It becomes a way of life. And there's no way that I could give that up. There are days when I might only train once a day, but I couldn't tell you the last day that I've had completely off training, because I love it so much.
Yeah, it's a beautiful message, and I think that that's very important because we all want to live longer, and the thing is to live longer and doing what we love and being in a decent shape for enjoying, because time is, I don't want to say time is running out, but the
Time is
older
precious.
we
Absolutely,
get,
time is precious. And
exactly.
it's funny. It is something I think about. We're very similar age. I know I'm 54 this year, so we're very similar. And obviously, I want to live as long as possible. And it's not even about living. I want to be active for as long as possible. And I want to be able to do things that when my girlfriends say, hey, let's go on a holiday and we'll run this track. For example, Wanaka. Let's go to Wanaka and I want to walk up Mount Roy. I want to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to come and do it with you. I don't want to be able to say, well, I really don't think I can do that anymore. So yeah, I think it's important. It's a great way to visit places, to see places. I know when I go to Girona, the running that I've experienced there, the same in other parts of Europe, I think it's something that you have for the rest of your life, and the benefits far, far outweigh the negatives.
The last thing I wanted to tell you is I want to deeply, deeply thank you for that day in 2016 in May, because during the Ultraman in Nusa, Ultraman Australia, that's a story I wanted to tell. And the point is not to be about me, but more about you. And it's a very good image of who you are, because on this day I was 77 kilometers into the run and I got lost arriving back in Nusa. I found myself, I was lost. I mean, mentally and physically, I was lost. And I found myself on the car park of a church, which was not that far from your house, I guess. And I couldn't find the route. I couldn't find the course. There was no signboard where I was. And I bumped into you. And I was yelling at you, Belinda, I'm lost, I'm lost. And you were wearing your city clothes. You were having like a jean short, your blues. And you say, I'm just going to run with you. And you were not even wearing like running shoes. And you ran with me the last 7 or 8 kilometers. You put me back on track and I went on to winning the race. But it was thanks to you. And I remember one thing, because everything was foggy around me, I was gone. And you were running inside the house, getting me water from the tape, from the water tap. And then you were bringing the bottle back to me. And that was amazing. And recently, on Facebook popped up an image where I was running on the beach and you were slightly behind me and you were pumping your arms in the air. And I wouldn't have won the race. And that's one of my greatest memories of the 35 years I had. It was running with you at the end, because I completely abandoned myself to you. And I was just following you and you put me back on track. And you I mean, thanks to you, I won the race, but was an amazing experience and I will be forever grateful.
You know what? It's funny you say that, because for me, it's one of the greatest experiences I've had as well. I'm lucky enough that I live on the course here, well, very close to the Ultraman course here. And I remember looking and thinking, shit, how are these guys supposed to find their way? Because like you said, it wasn't a lot of signage. And I thought, I'm going to walk this course backwards and just see if I can. I knew that you guys were on your way. It was the end of the run. And I did know, obviously I'd been following, and I knew that you were leading. And when I came across you and I knew that you didn't know where you were, and I mean, I can understand it. You'd been out there for how many hours already? And yeah, it was my honor, Arno. It was just as incredible for me as it was for you to be able to take you to the finish line. And yeah, what an experience. But then again, this is our sport, isn't it? What an experience for both of us, and one that we'll keep forever. It's just, this is our sport in a nutshell. It really is. I love it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of triathlon. Anyway, Belinda, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
Give a big hug to Justin.
The Juzzer. Yes, he's out there cooking my dinner for me. He's a good boy.
Good boy.
Oh, it's been doggies? A pleasure. Their doggies are beautiful, my babies. Yeah, Juzzy he took them for a big long walk this afternoon, so they're very, very happy. I'm now officially the slowest person in the house because they outrun me. And Justin's always outrun me, so it's okay. I can live with it. But no, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's been really good. They're gorgeous.
Perfect. Keep going like that. Don't change the things. We really love you for who you are together. And thank you very much for your time once more. Hope to see you maybe in Roth, maybe in Nusa sometime.
I'd love
Bye-bye.
that. Love
Cheers,
that.
Belinda.
Thank you, my love. Ciao. Bye.
Bye-bye. Cheers.